Lewis breaks into a train yard in the middle of the night in Los Angeles and begins chopping off a chain-link fence. He abruptly notices a light approaching and hastily conceals his tools to avoid being discovered by a security guard who requests identification. Lewis approaches the guard while feigning cooperation, but instead he attacks him to take his watch and knock him unconscious. After much haggling over the price, Lewis eventually travels to a scrapyard and sells the fence to the foreman. He then questions whether the foreman is hiring while trying to pitch himself with a ton of business speak. Lewis requests for an unpaid internship to get experience, but the foreman says he'll never hire a thief, implying that he knows where Lewis obtained the fence. The foreman first replies no. Later, as Lewis is driving, he notices a few police cars passing by and decides to stop to investigate the disturbance. It appears like there was an accident, and that passengers are still inside a burning automobile. Lewis observes with great interest and attention as Joe and his employee arrive to videotape everything at that precise moment. After they're through, Lewis asks Joe about his work. He says he's a stringer, which means he goes to murder scenes and accident scenes to quickly film everything, then sells the material to the newscast that offers the highest compensation. A police scanner and a camera are all that a stringer needs. Lewis asks Joe if he's hiring because he finds the position appealing, but Joe responds no. After watching the accident on TV the following day, Lewis is even more motivated to enter this industry. When he gets to the beach, he goes to pawn off his bike and waits for a guy to get distracted so he can grab it. No matter how much Lewis begs, the store owner won't budge on the price. Instead, he requests store credit in exchange for a police scanner and a camcorder. He starts listening to all the reports in the area that night using the scanner, but soon discovers he doesn't understand the codes and that he needs to find a decent way to get there as soon as possible. When he first shows up for a routine arrest, the police send him away right away. He next tries to record a woman who was pulled over by the police for driving while intoxicated, but they immediately eject him once more. He eventually arrives at the site of a tragic carjacking and approaches the victim closely enough to capture some extremely gory footage. An enraged policeman then pushes Lewis and another stringer out, cursing Lewis in the process since he can't finish filming. Ignoring his rage, Lewis pursues him to overhear their phone discussion in order to gain insight into how to bargain with newscasts and set fair prices. Lewis then visits Channel 6 and plays the video for Nina, the news director, who is instantly struck by how close he came. The producer Frank flips out and tells her they can't use such explicit visuals on a morning program when she phones him. Nina agrees to purchase the video, telling him they'll merely add a warning and reminding him that she is in charge. Lewis tries to negotiate but ultimately doesn't get the amount of money he had hoped for. Nevertheless, Nina tells him he has a lot of promise and that all he needs is a better camera because his current image quality isn't very good. Lewis inquires as to what would maximize his ratings, given her willingness to purchase more from him in the future. Nina responds that their audience is drawn to violent crimes and gruesome accidents that occur in affluent white neighborhoods. When Lewis watches his video the following morning on TV, he feels as though he has at last accomplished something. He saves the news tape to his computer and looks for a list of police codes online so he can learn what they signify. Later on, he has an interview with a young man named Rick. Once more, he employs a lot of corporate jargon to interrogate Rick and force him to sell himself, but in the end, he chooses to hire him since he has a phone, is familiar with the neighborhood, and is proficient with GPS Rick objects, saying that since he is nearly homeless, he should be paid at least a small amount when Lewis discloses that this internship is unpaid. Following much debate, Lewis decides to give him $30 a night. Rick and Lewis take advantage of the evening to teach Rick the police codes while they wait in the car and listen to the police scanner for a noteworthy incident. They finally hear of a fire after several hours of silence, so they head over there. In an attempt to get to the scene first, Lewis drives like a madman and yells at Rick, who is meant to utilize the GPS to identify the fattest route and provide directions. Rick gives him the wrong directions out of nervousness, and by the time they get to the correct location, the paramedics have already wheeled the victim away, so it's too late. Rick requests that Lewis not rush him after Joe makes fun of him for being late. Lewis becomes enraged with Rick and expects improved communication. The next time they have a good lead, Rick is not reprimanded by Lewis, and they arrive just in time. The robbed residence has been sealed off by the police, so nothing noteworthy can be documented. Refusing to let up, Lewis waits for the police to become sidetracked before breaking into the house and discovering the bullet holes in the kitchen. In order to make the scene appear more terrible, He rearranges the photos on the fridge around the holes. The film concludes with the victim speaking to the police through the holes in the window. He grabs some junk mail to obtain the victims' names before making his getaway. Louis shows Nina the tape a little while later, and she is enthralled by it. Frank becomes alarmed upon realizing that Louis broke in and that the names were taken from confidential correspondence, but Nina proceeds with the use of it nonetheless. From that point on, Louis and Rick have a lot of success in identifying interesting stories to record in order to eventually sell them to Nina. Rick locates the most efficient routes for Louis to arrive at the location quickly, and Louis documents every minute detail shamelessly while dodging the police. He downloads every clip to build a library on his computer, and watches TV every day to see his own work on screen. He buys a better camera for himself and another for Rick so he can film from a different perspective once he has enough money. They arrive at an automobile accident one evening ahead of the police. One of the drivers curses at Louis when he tries to question him because he is frantically attempting to speak with the 911 operator. Louis then proceeds to examine the wrecked automobiles and discovers the other driver dead in a shadowy place. In order to get a better picture, he drags the body till it is in front of the car lights. He records all he can until the police show there and take him into custody. Joe knows he's lost this one when he watches him pass by. When Louis shows Nina the video later, she sees that he has blood on his sleeve, but he asks her to dinner instead of acknowledging her presence. Nina first declines him, stating that she doesn't want to jeopardize their working relationship. She has no choice but to accept though, since Louis seems to be implying that if she says no, he won't be providing her with quality film. The following day, Joe runs into Louis and tells him he wants Louis to join him since he will be expanding his team by hiring different vans. Joe persists, and Louis rejects him, threatening to use violence against him. Joe, filled with rage, storms off, cursing Louis's name. When Saturday finally arrives, Louis tells Nina he wants to be his lover over dinner at a restaurant. Nina declines him once more, claiming that this was only a matter of professional etiquette. Louis jumps right in, quoting a ton of statistics he's discovered during his investigation, pointing out that her station has the lowest rating and that his videos have attracted thousands of new viewers. He is aware that Nina's contract is about to expire, and that she needs to accept his offer in order to keep her employment. Reluctantly, Nina is forced to start going out with Louis on the weekends to get dirty in exchange for his selling the tapes to her alone. A while later, Louis is late for the main event of the evening because Rick makes another error on the route. Joe makes fun of Louis for getting all the footage before his crew does. Louis gives Nina some recordings of lesser-known murders at the end of the evening, and Nina gets upset since their competitor channel will air the major story instead. Her supervisors will be incensed, and she feels as though she has offered her body to him for nothing. Louis breaks his bathroom mirror the following morning after seeing Joe's film on the rival channel and becoming extremely enraged. He chooses to sneak into Joe's house and tamper with his van out of a desire for vengeance. Rick and Louis show up that evening barely in time to capture an automobile crash on camera. It turns out that this is Joe's van, and the ambulance is taking him away because he was injured in the collision. Rick feels that it is improper to film a fellow stringer and claims that Joe is one of them, but Louis doesn't seem to mind and approaches to record everything nevertheless. Joe chokes on his own blood and gives Louis a ferocious gaze. A few nights later, Louis and Rick are quick enough to arrive at a massive, broken-in mansion before the police do. When Louis peeks inside and witnesses the thieves leaving the scene, he ducks behind some bushes to take pictures of their faces and the license plate of their vehicle. Louis then enters the home and keeps track of every drop of blood on the ground, tracing the path to locate each victim's body. Louis makes sure to record each one individually, even including a scene with an empty cot and enough build-up to give the impression that there might be a dead infant within. He discovers the man is still alive when he discovers the last body, but rather than assisting him, he records him as well and then flees with Rick just before the cops show up. After a few blocks, they come to a stop so Louis can quickly remove the perpetrators and the live victim from the video. Shortly after, he shows Nina the footage, and she is blown away. Frank freaks out as usual, but Nina makes sure everything is legal by calling the channel's attorney. The attorney clarifies that although there is some blurring of the borders, as long as the victims' faces are censored and the address is kept secret, everything should be okay. Louis then demands $15,000 for the footage, and when Nina declines to give it to him, he loses it. He tells her that since he is in charge here, she must always comply with his requests without objecting, ensure that the anchors give credit to his business, video production news, and introduce Lewis to all of her coworkers so he can begin forming relationships. Sickened, Nina can only concur. Lewis waits and observes, satisfied, as the anchors mention his company while introducing the footage when it's finally time to go live. In order to make everything more dramatic, violent, and terrifying, Nina keeps giving the anchors signals while they recount the crime scene. Nina receives a call from her superiors congratulating her, and requesting to meet Lewis after the commercial break. Detective Frontieri and her partner visit Lewis's flat the following morning to question him. Lewis fabricates a tale, claiming that after hearing the gunshots, he went into the house with the intention of helping but that it was too late, and that he instead began to record. He recalls seeing a van leave, but he was unable to see the faces of the robbers. The investigators aren't persuaded, but they have no other options, so they depart. Lewis then looks up the license plate online and finds one of the perpetrators' addresses. He goes there with Rick, and together they wait for the criminal to emerge from the house. Rick questions why Lewis won't notify the police right away when he sees the vehicle. Lewis responds that he wants the crooks to go somewhere nicer in the hopes that they'll resist the arrest and fabricate a better tale. This is getting too risky, says Rick in a panic, and he demands a rise. Rick replies that he makes $75 a night, which prompts Lewis to quickly close the sale. Rick realizes after seeing his response that he could have asked for much more, but Lewis informs him it's too late when he attempts to ask for a better amount. The two follow the criminal as he eventually leaves the residence, and watch him pick up his companion. After that, they pursue them until the offenders stop at a fast food restaurant. When Lewis does eventually dial the police, he tells them the crooks are armed and provides them with thorough details. In addition, he makes it clear that these are the individuals who are wanted in connection with the notorious crime and gives his identity as the finder. Rick knows he'll ask for half of the reward the cops put on these guys once Lewis hangs up. Rick leaves the restaurant to stand on the other side, and Lewis becomes enraged but realizes he really needs a second camera for those more perspectives, so he agrees to pay. When the police come, the criminals open fire on them, resulting in a gunfight that claims the lives of multiple individuals. Rick and Lewis record everything while one of the crooks is also dead and the other is hurt but is still able to flee by running and getting into his van. The police come after him right away, and Lewis first scoops up Rick before pursuing them. Lewis yells at Rick so he won't stop filming while driving like a crazy person. A civilian car collides with a police vehicle during the insane car chase, eliminating the police vehicle from the game. The criminal keeps following the other police car, and he starts crashing his van into their car until both he and the cops get into an accident. Lewis declares the culprit is dead as he quickly races to obtain a picture of every body. In order to find out more about the graphic images, he invites Rick to come and record. However, when Rick approaches, the criminal, who is actually still alive, shoots Rick down. The culprit gets out of the car, but before he can harm Lewis, he hears the police approaching and tries to flee. Lewis doesn't appear surprised and keeps filming. But the police shot him down right away, too. Later, when Lewis visits Rick and notes his wounds, Rick comes to understand that Lewis had been aware of the criminal's existence and had taken advantage of him in order to improve his story. After Rick passes away, Lewis steals his camera with no regrets. Lewis then shows Nina the entire tape, and she is thrilled to see such graphic content. As they prepare to go live, Frank tells her that he has received information from a reliable, hidden source that the family wasn't just some aggressive thugs breaking the law. Rather, they were a part of the mob and were concealing dangerous drugs. But Nina declines to include that information in the narrative, claiming that the tragedy of the common man appeals to readers more. Frank remarks that she sounds like Lewis, but Nina accepts the comparison with gratitude, stating that Lewis has motivated them to aim higher. Nina won't give up the tapes without a warrant when Detective Frontieri visits the station later and demands to see the footage since it is proof. Lewis then follows Frontieri to the police so they may question him, but he maintains his composure and tells the same tale. Frontier calls him out for his bizarre and immoral work policies as she grows more and more enraged, but she is forced to release him since she lacks supporting documentation. A few evenings later, Lewis employs 3 interns and purchases 2 vans bearing the Video Production News brand. Though he won't be paying any of them, he guarantees that before they depart together in search of the next narrative, he won't have them perform any tasks that he wouldn't perform himself. Nightcrawler, 2014. A gripping descent into moral depravity. The Nightcrawlers. Nightcrawler delves into the dark underbelly of Los Angeles news media. Jake Gyllenhaal delivers a chilling performance as Lou Bloom, a desperate and ambitious man who stumbles into the world of nightcrawlers, freelance videographers who capture graphic footage of accidents and crimes to sell to local news stations. A masterful performance. Gyllenhaal's powerhouse performance. Gyllenhaal is electrifying as Lou, perfectly embodying his obsessive personality and growing ruthlessness. A world of moral gray. The film masterfully explores the ethical dilemmas of sensationalized news and the lengths some will go to for a story. Gripping pacing. A relentless pace keeps viewers on the edge of their seats as Lou pushes boundaries and exploits tragedies for his own gain. Not for the faint of heart. Disturbing content. The violence and graphic footage captured by the Nightcrawlers can be unsettling for some viewers. Lou's unlikability. Lou is a deeply flawed and unsympathetic protagonist, which might make it difficult to root for him. Lack of resolution. The ending leaves viewers pondering the consequences of Lou's actions without offering a clear resolution. A cautionary tale. Nightcrawler serves as a stark reminder of the corrupting nature of ambition and the media's hunger for sensationalism. It prompts viewers to question the ethics of news reporting and the line between information and exploitation. All opinions in this summary are personal opinions. You can write a comment about your opinion. Thank you.